Well, I think it's time now.
Yep, I think we'll get started, huh?
Yeah.
All right. Well, a few more people will trickle in, but my name is Jay Castle, and I am co-chair of the Regional and Urban Design Forum, along with Brian Stryzik and Tyler Kobik, who's joining us from the road, so he's on his phone right now. We always start out with a few announcements of upcoming events that our forum attendees might be interested in. And next week, I think it's on Thursday actually, Spur is releasing their regional strategy and doing a forum around that from 12 to 1:30, building a better future for the region. So you might want to check that out. And then I believe it's maybe the week after that or 2 weeks after that, on May 26th, the AIA California, as part of their Urban Design Town Hall series, is going to be talking about housing in the urban boulevard. And that's from 8 to 9:30 a.m. Online. And then also just a reminder that the AIA National Conference is coming up, and they're doing it virtually again. It's starting in June, and I think they're doing kind of like 4 separate days in June, July, and August. So you could look for that as well. And with that, I will turn it over to Brian to introduce our guest tonight.
Excuse me. Hey, Jay. Tyler chipping in from the car here. One more announcement is our own RUD talk next month, which is mostly about library resilience in the city of Oakland, with the director of the Oakland Public Library. So also want to put that on people's calendar for 1 month from now, first Thursday of June.
Yeah, thanks, Tyler. I forgot about that.
Well, wonderful, guys. Thank you. I want to start by saying this is being recorded, so everyone knows. But I'm very excited to introduce tonight's program called Spanning the Rail, BART Transforming Oakland. I've been trying to think about, ever since we started planning this, trying to figure out like when I first rode BART for that experience. And I just can't remember it, but I do remember while living in San Francisco, some days on, commuting back and forth and trying to get to the airport. But then I moved to Oakland 10 years ago, and now BART is integral in my life. As a resident of Oakland and working in San Francisco, I spend more time on BART than I do with my parents now. So I started documenting my adventures on BART and have an Instagram account just documenting my BART things. I think of it as my BART family photographs. There's such pride in our local transit system, as shown by several circumstances. One being, the drummer at Grand Lake Farmers Market, often wearing his BART knit cap, or when you're sitting in BART and someone's pant leg pulls up a little bit and you see some BART socks. People throughout the region just really love our system that we have. Before COVID, BART transported over 400,000 people daily, connecting our region and cities and people all together. Even during COVID, there's been amazing things happening. 2 new BART stations opened up, residents moved into the high rise at MacArthur, and there's this continued planning and critical thinking about how to improve the system and areas surrounding our stations. Over the last year, I've missed BART commuting experiences. So to celebrate Transportation Week and to fill my BART commuting void, we arranged tonight's discussion with Robert Raburn, the District 4 BART Director, Abby Thorne Lehman, the BART Transit Oriented Development Group Manager, Phoebe Chen, BART's Acting Group Manager for Civil and Structural Track Engineering. And we got a special guest who came in late, Will Goodman of Strata Investments Group. I want to thank Robert for all of his help organizing this and putting this event together, and his continued support of this forum. These 3 individuals are incredibly knowledgeable, so please gear up your difficult questions, and you can put them in the chat at any point. And if I will have points throughout the presentation where we can ask them and filter them, and then at the end we'll have hopefully a lively discussion. So please virtually welcome the presenters tonight of Spanning the Rail, BART Transforming Oakland.
Thank you very much, Brian, for that kind introduction and for all the work you do with the AIA East Bay. I wish I could see each of you personally and be back in the room together, but I'm here virtually with my Fruitvale Station virtually behind me. Fruitvale, by the way, is the busiest station in the East Bay. Of course, while the downtown's closed due to the pandemic, those essential workers are coursing through our fare gates at Fruitvale in large numbers. It's the 5th busiest station in BART overall right now. So that's quite an accomplishment. Tonight, we're going to be talking about a special component of transit-oriented development, and that's a component that we haven't explored yet at BART, the idea of spanning the rails and really building up above BART. So I'm going to just provide a few introductory comments and turn it over to the subject area experts. We'll start with an image of, let's try this one, PowerPoint slideshow, and just focused in on the East Bay. The BART 36 of 50 BART stations are in the East Bay. To appeal to transit-dependent BART stations are in the East Bay. The people we want to appeal to transit-dependent passengers, new developments, the people the service needs to offer what I call show up and go service. New developments. The service needs show up and go frequencies. Show up and go need to be about 5 minutes. Well, the show up and go frequencies throughout the pandemic need to be about 5 minutes on our service. And of course, but throughout the pandemic, the 9 stations cut back on that are shown in the East Bay served the 9 stations or more lines that are shown West in the East Bay served by 3 or more lines to Bayfair West by 3 different lines. And that gives MacArthur south about Bayfair, that 5 minute 3 different lines. That gives truly is about that the 5 gold standard headway for providing that truly is development. The gold standard these for are providing transit-oriented development. Speaking of service, these are on September 13th, BART will restore. Speaking of service, on September 13th, BART will restore. Each of our lines will be operating on weekdays at midnight, and each of our lines will be operating on weekdays at 15-minute headway. Part of putting this together, we decided we wanted to solicit putting this together the experts. Images of early BART development from you, so we're the experts. Back the clock images of early BART development, and I'm sharing with you the responses of for these early. And I'm sharing with you the responses, and it's not your fault that there are only really 3. And it's not your fault that there are only really in the upper left is a rendering. I think it's Rockridge. In the upper left is a rendering. I think it's Rockridge. Median. The orientation out toward platform, Angel Island Freeway Median bridges. Looking out toward if you Angel Island off to the sides of the freeways. If you it looks like some high-rises to the sides of the freeways, but they're downplayed. It looks like some high-rises were depictions seen. If we look at the image to the right corner, that's downtown Berkeley. If we look at the image to the right, original design for Berkeley called for an elevated line. And the original design for Berkeley called for an elevated line. The Berkeley City Council passed a resolution, but in 1960. The Berkeley City Council passed a resolution. Well, there was a lot of contention over that. Shall be there wasn't any money in the bond. Well, there was a lot of contention over that because there wasn't any money in the bond subway act. The original and by 1966, Berkeley voters a subway approved a and by 1966, Berkeley voters to put approved a $20.5 that's a bargain $1 million standards to put BART underground. I'll note that that's a bargain. No vision shown in the image. Of increased urban density. There's no vision shown in the only foresight that we can increase urban credit for is that they wanted to preserve their existing commercial activity is that they wanted to preserve their existing in the lower left activity only from 24th and Mission Station. In the lower left emphasizes 24th and Mission Station adjacent to a station emphasizes massive density. So the question is, why was BART not widely considered to be a catalyst? So the question is, why was BART not widely considered to be a catalyst? I think the answer land use transformation. Early documents. This is a page from a 1974 U.S. early document study. This is a page from a 1974 U.S. DOT study that BART was BART trails to coexist with the automobile. That BART was intended, here's the quote, to coexist BART's role in the region. Special facilities. Here's the quote, BART included free automobile parking. Special facilities of BART included free automobile parking. An urban transformation would have to wait until after the Spanish-speaking Unity Council. An urban transformation would have to wait until after the Spanish-speaking Unity Council in parking garage. Let a community uprising over BART's Fruitvale Station parking garage in 1990, 2004. Fruitvale Station opened in 2004. My background here is this. One of the earlier transit-oriented developments, but it's truly modest. One of the earlier modern standards. It's only 84 units, but it's truly modest. And community service standards. It's only 84 units of housing blocks of former community services are located on two city blocks of former included a costly new parking structure. The project included that BART transit-oriented development really meant. I used to joke new parking. That BART transit-oriented development really meant new parking garage. The MacArthur Station groundbreaking was groundbreaking for more than the MacArthur Station groundbreaking. It was a transformation. Was groundbreaking for more than just the MacArthur. In this image, it was a transformation. November 15th, 2013. In this image, we did the groundbreaking for November 15th, 90 affordable units. We did the groundbreaking for the mural structure. 90 affordable units of that the project structure engendered a lot of attention because that project, the images that we shared engendered a lot of attention at the mural groundbreaking. The images that we shared with the folks that were at the mural groundbreaking were 6 months later of a 27 on May 15th of 2014. 6 months later, Senate on May 15th of 2014, Darrell Steinberg, California Senate, a multi-billion-dollar climate strategy. Darrell Steinberg announced a multi-billion-dollar climate strategy. Steinberg then convinced Governor Jerry Brown to dedicate cap and trade. Steinberg then convinced Governor Jerry Brown to dedicate cap and trade revenue toward affordable housing and sustainable communities. Well, in round 5 of those AHSC grants last year, in round 5 of those AHSC grants last year, BART helped prepare were awarded. Of the grant applications, California's Strategic Growth Council administers these grants. California's Strategic Growth Council administers these grants that BART and has expressed of delivering these projects during that BART is during the pandemic delivering these projects. To date, AHSC has invested more than $1.6 billion in 127 catalytic developments across California. In 127 I contend that one key to continued housing progress I contend that one key to continued housing development policy was the BART Board's adoption of a bold, it's now projected development policy in 2016. About 25,000. It's now projected of housing to create BART property over about with fully 35% of housing on BART property over 8,500 with fully units. 35% affordable of those over 8,500 units. The bar will be extremely high. 35% is setting the bar. Of course, extremely high. There's the affordable housing component, but the other part of that SC is there's the affordable housing component, but the other part of that SC is, and that was also addressed by the BART Board's access policy. Also,
and that was
from
also addressed by the
2016.
BART Board's
As
access
the hierarchy
policy,
on the
also
left-hand side
from
of the screen shows,
2016.
walking,
As the hierarchy
bicycling,
on
and
the
transit
left-hand side
are
of the
now
screen
given
shows,
priority.
walking,
Over automobile
bicycling,
parking
and
down
transit
at the bottom
are now
of
given
the
priority
hierarchy.
over automobile
The pie
parking
charts
down
on
at
the right
bottom of
show
the
that the
hierarchy.
active access.
The pie charts on the
have
right
grown from
show that
in
the
2008
active
around
access
35%
have grown from
access
in
to
2008
44%
around 35%
in 2015
access.
Our
to
performance
44%
target for
in
active access
2015.
in 2025 is 52%.
Our performance target for active access
Obviously,
in 2025
active
is
access
52%.
assumes
Obviously,
that we're not going to
active
be
access
surrounding our stations
assumes
with moats of
that we're
parking that
not
really
going to
are
be
self-imposed
surrounding our stations
limitations
with
moats of parking that
how
really
many
are
people can
self-imposed
utilize any given
limitations.
station.
When the
On
lots fill
how
up
many
out in
people
Dublin
can
Pleasanton,
utilize any given
I like to
station.
joke that
When the
the
lots
station
fill
agent
up
can
out
turn
in
the
Dublin
keys in the lock.
Pleasanton
And
walk
I like
away
to
at
joke
midday.
that the station
Um,
agent can
and
turn the
nobody
keys
would
in the
know.
lock and walk away at
So,
midday.
I want to-
and nobody would know. Thank you for allowing me to
So,
share a brief
I want to
background about
thank you
BART
for
TOD,
allowing me to
and I
share
hope you
a
agree
brief background
that the best way to
about
supply
BART TOD,
and I hope you agree
is to
that the
build
best way to
high-density
supply
mixed-use
developments within walking
to
distance
build
of BART.
high density
I'm optimistic
mixed-use
about the
developments
future
within
of our
walking
core
distance of
cities.
BART. Those
I'm
cities
optimistic
particularly,
about the future
well-served
of our core cities
between MacArthur and
cities
Bayfair
particularly
and
the
West Oakland.
well-served.
Today,
Between MacArthur
land
and
use
Bayfair
is
and
tightly
West
linked
Oakland.
with transit development.
Today,
at BART
land use
and
is
on the
tightly
Capitol
linked
Corridor
with
when we're
transit
talking
development.
about a new
at
Trans-Bay
BART
crossing
and on the Capitol
and
Corridor where we're
land
talking
use
about
is a
a new
big
Trans-Bay
part of
crossing.
our discussions
And
there.
Now
Land use
I'll
is
turn
a
the
big
presentation
part
over
of
to
our
Abigail
discussions there.
Thorne Lyman.
Now
BART's
I'll
manager
turn
of
the presentation over
transit-oriented
to
development.
Abigail Thorne Lyman, BART's manager of
Thank you.
transit-oriented development.
So, and I'm going to share my
Thank
screen
you.
here. I'm going to give a little bit of an additional high-level view on
share my screen
BART,
here. I'm
BART's
going to give
policy
a little
framework
bit
and
of
our
an additional
process,
high-level
and then
view
we'll
on
stop for questions
BART's
and a little bit of
policy
discussion,
framework and our
Phoebe
process,
and will
and then
deep dive
we'll
into some
stop
of
for
the
questions and a
more
little bit of
physical
discussion. And then
aspects.
Phoebe
and will deep dive into
and
some of the
in the true
more
spirit of
physical
working from
aspects.
home, my
son has decided that now is the
and
perfect time to take a bath.
in the true
So-
spirit of working from
sorry
home,
that you're going to
my
hear the
son
water
has
running in
decided
the
that now is the
background.
perfect time to take a bath. So
Sorry that
So
you're going to
some
hear
of
the
you
water running in the
are
background.
very familiar with
Some of the other state
so
policy.
some of you are
that,
very familiar with
some of
has
the other
been
state policy
evolving
around
land
land
use
use
controls
and
has been
I'm not going to spend a lot of time on
around
that tonight,
land
although
use
it is
controls
usually
and
core to my
I'm
presentation.
not going to
that I'm
spend a lot of
given,
time
which
on that
is
tonight.
it pertains
although
to
it is
Assembly Bill
usually
2923.
core to my presentations that I'm given,
authored by
which is it pertains to Assembly Bill
David Chu
2923
in 2018,
authored
which,
by
which really was a turning
David
point
Chu
for
and
BART.
Timothy Grayson in
2018,
in that
which really was a turning point for BART.
state
will require local
in
jurisdictions
that,
to rezone
the state
property
will
in
require local
Alameda,
jurisdictions
Contra Costa, and
to
San Francisco
rezone
counties to meet certain
BART
minimum
property
transit-oriented
in
development
Alameda,
zoning
Contra Costa, and
requirements.
San Francisco
When it
counties
comes
to
to
meet certain
Oakland,
minimum
however,
transit-oriented development
and
zoning
downtown Oakland in
requirements.
particular,
When
as
it
well
comes
as
to
West
Oakland,
Oakland,
however,
Lake Merritt extending
and
south
downtown
to
Oakland in
Coliseum,
particular,
the city
as
of
well
Oakland
as
is
West
so
Oakland
advanced in
and
its
Lake
zoning
Merritt
that
extending south to
this
Coliseum.
is a bill that's
The city
almost
of
not
Oakland
affecting
is so
Oakland at all,
advanced
with
in
the
its
exception of
zoning
Rockridge.
that it is
and
this
so
is a bill
that
that's
is why
almost
I'm not going to
affecting
dwell on
Oakland at all
it tonight,
with the
because
exception
our
of
focus is
Rockridge.
really the core of Oakland, which
and so
has
that is why I'm
fantastic
not going to
plans
dwell
in
on it tonight,
that have
because our
really
focus is really
launched
the
and
core of
spurred a lot of
Oakland,
the
which has
development
fantastic
that we see
plans in
coming
place
down the pike,
that
which I
have
will
really
talk about a
launched
little
and
bit,
spurred a
have
lot of the
developers
development
and
that we
architects
see coming
involved
down the
in a
pike,
lot
which
of
I
these
will
plans
talk
on
about
this
a little
meeting,
bit.
who know a lot more about this
and
building
architects
involved in a lot of these
plans
plans
on
this
AB
meeting, who know a lot
2923
more
did
about
spur
this
for
building
BART
than
that
I
was
do.
not a state requirement, but was something we realized
AB
we needed as we
2923
were in
did
conversation
spur
with
for BART that was
jurisdictions,
not a
a
state
10-year
requirement, but
plan
was something we realized
that
we needed
gave
as we were in
both
conversation
cities
with
and
jurisdictions,
developers
was
a
more
10-year work
transparency about our
plan
intentions around
that
our land.
gave and
both
this is
cities
just a
and
piece of it,
developers
but I
more
just want to
transparency about our
highlight for those
intentions
who aren't
around our
familiar
land.
with BART's portfolio
And
of
this is just a
land,
piece
that we
of
have
it, but I just want to
250 acres of
highlight
land across
for those who
27
aren't familiar with
stations,
BART's portfolio of
22
land, that we have
jurisdictions,
almost
250 acres of
entirely
land across
in the East
27
Bay. There are a
stations,
couple of
22
opportunities
jurisdictions
in the West
almost
Bay, but they're very
entirely
small.
in the East Bay. There are a
And
couple
by
of
our
opportunities in
estimation,
the
we
West
could
Bay, but they're very
produce
small.
28,000
housing units
and
on
by
this
our
land, which
estimation, we
more than
could
exceeds
produce
our mandate by the
28,000
board from
housing units
2016
on
to
this
produce
land,
20,000
more than
housing units by
exceeds our
2040.
mandate by
But
the board
also
from
jobs are very
2016
important
to
to BART,
produce
and
20,000
ensuring we have a more
housing units
sustainable
by
ridership
2040.
pattern where
But
folks are
also
staying
jobs
in
are
the
very
East Bay,
important to BART,
commuting
and
to the
ensuring
East
we have a
Bay,
more sustainable
and
ridership pattern
enabling
where
us
folks
to
are
fill the
staying in
seats
the
that
East Bay,
pre-COVID were
commuting to the East
empty,
Bay,
coming
and
back from San
enabling us
Francisco
to
to
fill the
Oakland
seats
on a
that
daily
pre-COVID
basis.
were empty.
And so this
coming
map
back
sort of
from
shows
San
what BART's
Francisco to
priorities
Oakland
are
on
on
a
a daily basis,
and that
we
we intend to
sort of
shows
be
what
building
BART's
mixed-use
priorities are
development and job generating
and that we
development at a lot of our
intend to
stations.
be
In
building
addition to
mixed-use
housing,
development
and that we
job
really are
generating
trying to
development at a
achieve
lot of our
both,
stations.
just a
In
really
addition to
sustainable
housing,
and balanced,
and that we really are
form of
trying
land
to
use.
achieve both. Just a really
sustainable
I
and
think we
balanced
can't have any
form of land
meetings about TOD or about transit
I
without
think we
talking
can't
about
have
the impacts of
any
COVID.
meetings
about
and,
TOD or about transit
Director
without
Raburn
talking
mentioned
about
we
the
are going to
impacts
be
of COVID.
restoring our service, and I think we are moving into a new era. But
Director Raburn mentioned we are going to be
restoring our service,
and I think we are moving into
the
a
worst
new era.
moments
But
for BART,
when we were really at the lowest ridership,
at the worst moments
for BART,
that was the point at which
the lowest ridership,
BART's customer service and research
that
team
was the point at
did
which
their biannual
customer satisfaction survey, which
customer
had
service
really
research
interesting
team
demographic
did their
information.
biannual
Really
customer
speaking to what Director
satisfaction
Raburn
survey,
was
which
saying
had
about Fruitvale
really
Station
interesting
as well.
demographic information.
That people,
really
the
speaking to what
essential
Director
riders,
Raburn
and
was
though
saying
they are
about
essential
Fruitvale
workers,
Station
I think
as
we should
well.
also be considering them to be BART's essential
riders,
because
and
they
though they
have
are
kept
essential
us
workers,
moving.
I think we should also
They
be
have kept
considering
us
them to be
going.
BART's essential
And
riders.
the
because they have
demographics
kept
of these
us
riders
moving.
are
They
very
have
different
kept
than the
us
past
going.
demographics.
And the
of BART
demographics of
riders,
these riders
which really
are very
historically
different than the past
mirror
demographics of
the demographics
BART
of the
riders,
region,
which
and
really
now we see riders
historically mirror
have been much lower in
the demographics of the
have
region.
been much more
And
likely
now we
to
see
be
riders
people of
have
color
been much lower
and have
income,
owned many fewer
have been
cars,
much
so
more likely to
53%
be
of riders
people
when
of
the
color
survey was done
and
this
have
year
owned many
did not
fewer
own
cars.
a
So
car.
53%
So
of
when we
riders
think about
when the survey was
TOD and
done
should
this year
TOD
did
continue
not
to be an
own a
essential
car.
element of BART,
So when we think about
I would
TOD
argue that
and
these
should TOD
demographics
continue to be an essential
reflect
element
and
of BART,
emphasize that
I
we are
would
more
argue
important than
that
ever.
these demographics
Because we are delivering
reflect and
affordable housing,
emphasize
and we are
that
keeping
we are more
essential
important than ever
riders at the stations.
because we
So
are
if we
delivering
ever go
affordable
through
housing,
something
we are
like
keeping
this
essential
again, heaven
riders
forbid,
at the stations.
we are able to
So if
continue
we
to serve
ever
and
go
serve
through
in
something
greater
like
numbers,
this again,
people
heaven
who
forbid,
really are transit dependent,
we are able to continue to serve and serve in greater numbers.
People who
live
really
that
are
lifestyle,
transit dependent,
or
people who really truly
prefer
need to be
to
next
not
to
own a
BART
car,
because
prefer to live
they
that
need a
lifestyle,
lower cost of
and
living.
people who really truly need to be next to BART.
We have also in our work plan, we did a lot of work around
benefits of TOD, which I think is fantastic. And I just always
have
want to hit
also
this
in our
talking
work plan,
point,
we
which
did
I
a lot
think
of work
everybody
around
should really
benefits
hone
of
in
TOD,
because
which I think is
this pertains
fantastic.
to
And I just
any
always want to
housing
hit this
unit built
talking
in the
point,
Bay
which I
Area,
think
not
everybody
just on
should
BART
really hone
land.
in because
Every house
this
built in the Bay
pertains
Area
to any
generates
housing
4.5
unit built
jobs
in
in
the Bay Area,
California,
not just on
and
BART land.
almost
Every
two-thirds
house
of those
built in the Bay
jobs
Area
are middle
generates
skill
4.5
jobs
jobs in
that
California,
pay well
and
don't require a
almost
college
two-thirds of
degree.
those jobs are middle skill jobs that pay
I'm
well
going to turn
and
for a
don't
moment
require a college
to
degree.
design review, and Phoebe's on. Phoebe is
I'm going to
is
turn for a
my
moment
counterpart in the
to
maintenance
design
and engineering
review,
department, and
Phoebe's
so glad that
on.
she could
Phoebe
join us
is
because when BART talks about development,
engineering
there are
department,
sort of
there's
so
three
glad that she
ways,
could
right?
join
There's
us
joint development,
because when
which
BART
is the
talks
most
about
direct way
development,
that BART
there
is
are
involved
sort
in
of
development, where we
three
are building
ways,
on
right?
our
There's
property.
joint development.
There's
which
also
is the
wind
most
development,
direct way
and
that
many
BART
of
is
you have
involved
probably been involved
where
in
we are building
projects
on
that
our
are
property.
adjacent to the
There's
tracks
also
or
wind
touch
development
the
and
BART
many of you
area
have
of
probably been
influence
involved in
that are
projects
not
that are
on BART
adjacent to
property.
the tracks
And
or
Phoebe's
touch the
BART
department
area of influence
is kept quite
that are
busy
not
not on
those
BART
through our real
property.
estate permits,
And Phoebe's
where we are
department
to make sure there are
is
no
kept
adverse
quite
impacts
busy with
on
those
the transit
through our real
system.
estate permits.
And at any given
where
time,
we are
we can have 10
to make sure there are no
15
adverse
of those
impacts on
going
the transit
at
system.
once. Right now,
And
we
at
have
any given
33
time, we can
permits
have
in
10,
process.
15
So
of those
that is,
going
I think, a key
at
piece.
once. Right now, we have
key
33
role BART is
permits in
playing and making
process.
sure development is happening near the
that is,
tracks.
I think, a key piece.
Even if
a
it's
key
not
role
happening
BART is
on our
playing
property,
and making sure development is
and of
happening
course,
near
the
the
third
tracks.
and key component is
even if
stationary
it's not happening
planning
on our property.
and
of course, the
advocating
third and key component
for
is
higher
stationary
density
planning.
uses
And
not on
and
BART property, but
advocating
absolutely adjacent
for
to BART.
higher density
and really
uses,
pushing for
not on BART
um,
property, but
for
absolutely
higher
adjacent
intensity
to BART.
zoning
and
near
and
BART
really
stations,
pushing
and
for
encouraging the state to continue
for
doing what it's
higher
doing.
intensity
And
zoning.
the BART board
has
has time and
stations
again
encouraging the state
year,
to continue doing what it's doing. And the BART Board has time and again supporting that legislation in Sacramento that is pushing forward to try to lower parking ratios supporting and increase that legislation in Sacramento that is pushing forward to try to lower parking ratios. But I want to focus on BART's joint development deals because that's what my day in and day out life is. I want to focus on BART's joint development deals about streamlining and that's what my day in and day out life is. I think BART joint development deals are special in many ways. So I think BART joint development deals are special, but I just want to get everybody on the same page. One is that maybe these are obvious, but I just want to get everybody on the same page. One is developers have to run the gauntlet, when BART is developing entitlements process, but also the developers have to run the gauntlet, not just of the city entitlements process. We are not looking at aesthetics, but also the BART generally, but we are absolutely looking at access. We are not looking at aesthetics critical generally, but we have to look at the next 100 years of access needs for BART when a project is coming in. So we have to look at the next 100 years of access. How are people circulating when a project is coming in? So we don't where are the station agents going to park? How are people circulating? Because they're arriving at 3 a.m. Where are the station agents going to park? And is the design of the development in any way going to potentially impact the operations of the system? And is the design of the development in any way time was when potentially impact the operations of the system? And I think one burn and worst moments in time was when the really had an impact on us. And how we do design review and did affect the tracks, and I think that really had an impact on us, the way we do how we do design review. Talk about that. And so we learn from these things. Also, when you're constructing your building in an operating transit environment, talk about that, which means your construction phasing plan. Also, when you're constructing your building in an operating transit environment, going to continue to safely construction phasing plan. The station is so critical. How are patrons challenging aspects of doing these projects? And I think the developers these are all really quite challenging aspects. I'm glad people like projects really exist to do these are quite brave, and they're so important. This is the most important land in the Bay Area. To do these, not easy because they are so important. I want to talk about some streamlining things that we've done recently, but it is not easy. I think first and foremost, I want to talk about some streamlining things that we've done recently. To get a lot of clarity around first and foremost policies. Like I said, our work plan and being clear about what we own. To get a lot of clarity around our own policies. I'll show some of that to you in a minute. Like I said, our work plan and being clear about what we own. Excited about seeing some of these sites. I'll show some of that to you in a minute. What our expectations are around land value return. Excited about seeing a lot of work with the board to clarify that. What our expectations are around land value return. We've been doing a lot of work with the board to clarify that. What BART expects in terms of which has developments is a recent policy adopted by the board. And then my department's engagement and involvement with policy adopted by the board engineering has become my department's engagement and involvement with maintenance and engineering. I would say that it used to be that our department was a bit of a cowboy at BART, and we would often I would say that it used to be that our department was a bit of a cowboy at BART, and we would often not ask trying to get we would live by asking for forgiveness really embedded in the DNA of BART. And now I think we're trying to get understood. We're trying to work to understand the DNA of BART and understood. We understood one of the critical moments for BART was the creation by our critical head of operations of BART was the creation engineering division by our current really head of operations of the integration engineering what BART's operational and engineering which really does try to translate between. And so we have some BART's operational and engineering needs are and the world of developers. And so we have some fantastic. We are trying to with developers anticipate our station access needs earlier in the process. We are trying to something I'm continuing to work on. Station access needs earlier in the process. We also are trying to anticipate our relationship to the city and trying to coordinate review. And this is we also are trying to anticipate our relationship to the city and trying to coordinate review. And jurisdictions is a very real with various jurisdictions. And what happens during the entitlements process? When does BART get to review versus the city? How is a developer supposed to reconcile process? When does BART get to review versus the city planning? How is a developer from BART to reconcile it? They get BART's design review. And so rather than having the developer have to sit from BART's tug, both BART's design review, and so rather than having the developer have to sit actually try to reconcile those conflicts, we offline work with the city to actually try to reconcile the middle, but at least we're also offline to each other while we're playing tug of war. Maybe he's still caught in the middle, but at least and a couple things that are coming up. I think parking replacement is always going to be the elephant in the room. And a couple things that are coming up. I think parking replacement is always going to be the elephant in the room. development deals. And so we're going to be talking to the board a little bit about this summer. I'm giving Director Ray a little hint. And so we're going to be talking to the board a little bit about this summer. I'm giving AB 2923 allows our developers some new authority around streamlining. That AB 2923 allows our developers some new authority around streamlining. The bar is a little bit lower to use those SB 35 streamlining authorities. And so if our developers have the ability to circumvent streamlining design review, but cities don't have. And so if our developers have the ability to circumvent local design review, what is BART's role in making sure we get objective design standards in place yet? So those are two BART's role in making sure we get quality projects. One more slide here. So those are two issues. You know, we're trying to lay out kind of a flow chart of how this works, and one of the elements we're trying to be better about lay out developers chart of providing works, and one of the elements I know you're all familiar about with developers, but is providing what we're calling an owner charter. An obligation to try to state up front with the basis of design, what we're going to need. It's BART's. We feel an obligation to try to state up front. Phoebe will talk a little bit about what we're going to need too, about the BART facility standards. But what are our needs? Phoebe will talk a little bit about this too, about the BART facility standards. But what are our needs? As best as we can makes everybody's lives so much easier. Developer and the architect's plans. From day one, during the concept design review phase, when you're going into concept planning, you know there are certain things during the concept design review phase till later. And so there are certain things that we're looking at, certain things that we're saving how much detail do we need at this phase? And so we're trying to kind of tease out, can we wait till later on certain forward? How much detail do we need at this phase? And then on final design review, wait till later on certain details. I think Phoebe, I'll let Phoebe kind of focus on final design this one, which is really where she comes in. I'll let Phoebe kind of focus. We play several roles on this one, which is really where she comes in, construction oversight. We play several roles, including construction permits. So under the properties here, so here's some of our juicy properties that we've gotten. So under the properties here, so here's some of our juicy properties left here you've gotten in the store Oakland area. And this is all. If you go down to the lower left, scroll around and look for your favorite BART sites and look at some of the details on there. You can go scroll around and look. So I just want to touch on two of these. One is details on them. The corner 21st and Broadway. So I just want to touch on two right next to the Paramount Theater. The corner 21st and Broadway is one of our properties. Unfortunately, right next to the Paramount Theater, BART tracks is not possible. Is one of our properties. Unfortunately, this is one right under this. BART tracks is not possible. We've determined where structurally, I don't think this is on right under this. The property is, but we are going to be constructing a bike station. I don't think this is on the cards for a TOD. We'll still be, but we are going to be constructing a bike station on this property. And this is going to be one of our prime opportunities. Playing a role in this is on West Grand, and this is going to be one of our prime opportunities. As you can see near North Break, this is on West Grand. The tracks come out of the tunnel. As you can see near North Break, a dispensary and Taco Bell. So where tracks come out of the tunnel, it's nestled between a lot of foot. A dispensary and Taco Bell. So we're like perfectly situated. A little less than an acre. And currently leased to the post office. We're going to be using this for construction staging for an acre. And currently leased to the post office. We're going to be using this for construction staging for the East Line project for the next 2 years. But this and the Valley Road project, once we start to see more high-rises in this area, I think that then this opportunity and the Valley Road project, once we start to see more high-rises in this area, a couple of ones that I think are not on our cards right now, but I do want to couple of ones that I think are not on our cards right now, but I do want to flag them as options are where the tracks are coming out of the ground. Maybe the 20 years. These are going to be really hard sites. Are where the tracks are coming out of the ground towards West Oakland. These are going to be really hard sites and towards Fruitvale, coming out of the ground towards West Oakland. I don't think that there anybody is really Fruitvale within BART is really honestly. I don't think that there anybody is really all of this safety and within BART is really honestly thinking we can handle tracks in these locations all of this yet. Safety and operational. Nonetheless, I think it's important to know that we own them locations yet. And this one in particular, as I think it's important to know that we own them. And this one in particular, as the tracks are coming out, the city has zoned for high rise. So. I don't know, but it seems like this is the future Hudson Yards kind of situation where we're not ready to. We're not ready. But it seems like this is the future Hudson Yards kind of situation where we're not ready to. We're not ready to maybe things will. But someday when there's very little recently approved projects, maybe things will. I think I saw a couple of our recently approved projects for this one on. online.
I think I
This is
saw
our
it
West
on here,
Oakland
so
project,
you've
and I
got
think
an
this is
architect
more
for
the
this
model
one
of what you're looking
online.
we're gonna
This
see
is our West
taller
Oakland project,
buildings,
and I think
much
this
much
is more
less
the model
parking,
of what you're
mixed use,
we're thinking
really
gonna
pushing
see
densities,
taller
pushing
buildings,
heights, much less
pushing
parking,
equity,
mixed
a
use,
lot of affordable housing,
really pushing densities,
some
pushing
commercial
heights,
space,
and pushing
for
equity,
nonprofits,
a
or
lot of
small
affordable
businesses.
housing.
And
Commercial
likewise, we have
space
Will
well on the
for
line
nonprofits,
with
strata
small
for the Lake Merritt
businesses.
development.
And
Likewise, we have Will
just a
well on the
shameless
line
plug
with
is going to
strata
planning
for the
commission.
Lake Merritt development.
Which
Going to planning
just a
commission on May
shameless
19th.
plug is going to planning commission.
So again, high-rise residential,
Going to planning
high-rise
commission
office,
on May
and 2
19th.
mid-rise affordable buildings.
So
I'll talk
again,
about this one a lot
high-rise
later, but
residential, high-rise
also
office, and 2 mid-rise affordable
buildings.
in the community.
I'll talk
And
about
the
this
first
one a lot
time
later,
BART
but
has really
also
gotten as close to the
deeply
tracks as we're
equitable
going
on
on our own
property.
property. And the first time,
So with
BART
that,
has
I'll
really gotten
pause
as close
for
to the tracks
questions,
as
and
we're
then we
going
can
on
move
our
to
own
Phoebe and
property.
Will. So with that, I'll pause for questions, and then we can move to Phoebe and Will.
I don't see anything in the chat, so if anybody wants to just,
I don't see anything in the
raise your
chat,
hand,
so if
and ask a
anybody
question, or we
wants
can
to
move on to
just,
Phoebe. Maybe raise your hand and ask a question, or we can move on to Phoebe.
I'll ask
Okay.
one question. So
Oh, go ahead, Brian.
you said like one of the bigger challenges you have.
Okay.
Ask one question. So
Oh, go ahead, Brian.
you said like one of the bigger
parking
challenges you
spaces
have
down.
is
I'm
replacing
interested in
parking.
the idea of height,
And
even though
those
we talked
parking
about this a little
spaces
bit,
down.
seems like height is always something
the idea
that
of height.
neighbors,
I think we talked about this
are
a little
concerned
bit,
about.
but
So I'm
seems like
wondering
height is always
if it's because of the
something
zoning in
that
Oakland
neighbors
as already
are
allowing
concerned
for the height.
about.
So I'm wondering
or
if it's because of the zoning
people
in
expected
Oakland
around
that's already
BART,
allowing for the height. How
it's not an
how
issue,
that
or
addressed and
just
how
people expected around BART,
been.
just how how is that addressed and how
In downtown
reaction's been?
Oakland, uptown Oakland, and Lake Merritt, in downtown Oakland, height was addressed in the specific
Lake
plans,
Merritt,
and had the
height
city
has
not
really not
done the legwork in advance.
height was addressed in the
talking to the
specific
communities
plans,
about
and had the
height
city
and
not
the pros
done
and
the
cons of
legwork
height.
in advance.
We wouldn't be
talking
there
to the
today
communities
where
about
we are
height
right now at
and
Lake
the
Merritt.
pros
I would
and
say,
cons of
Will,
height.
we wouldn't be there today where we are right now at Lake Merritt. I would say, Will,
allowed for that.
I would say,
but
the Lake Merritt specific plan really allowed for that. I would say at West Oakland, I think that the developer very bravely went and had that conversation. West Oakland, I think that the developer and gained very bravely went and had that conversation. So yeah, in the other areas, absolutely height is buy-in. So going to be in the other areas, El Cerrito, absolutely height 2 nights ago, and it was all going to be key. We were just in El Cerrito, but 2 nights ago. The other thing is all we're finding with what the dialogue has shifted. But I think the other thing is that what we're finding is it's inevitable. The dialogue has shifted, and I think that's what the authority of the state has done. It's inevitable. It's coming whether we like it or not. So we may as well have a say before somebody shoves it down our throats. It's coming whether we like it or not. So we may as well have a say. Change the conversation before somebody shoves it down our throats. And it has absolutely changed the conversation. And BART has made it clear that we are a good partner in this. That we are not here. And BART has made it clear that we are ugly buildings. That we are bad buildings. We are not here. Absolutely hates. The minute we build an ugly building, going to the next city. And bad building, something that everybody absolutely hates. That's where we feel like going to the next city. The important thing for us to do as we move into these communities that are feel like affected by the state law. The important thing for us to do is to work with the cities, communities that are as the landowner enforce quality design in a way that the cities and as the landowner enforce, and so quality design in a way that the cities are no longer allowed to.
And you raise a very important point, Brian, and the public has really you raise a very important point, Brian, and largely because they've also shifted in their expectations about the community benefits. Largely because they've also shifted in their expectations about the community benefits that any project brings. That we've been realists. We expect the major community benefit to be the affordable component of the housing. We expect the major community benefit to be the affordable Lake Merritt, even the housing itself. Subsidized rents for commercial. Lake Merritt even displacing subsidized rents for commercial, and so that to be able to bring those kinds of benefits, it requires the density bonus. To be able to bring those kinds of benefits, it requires the density bonus. Be truthful with the public, set the expectations, Show them examples. Be truthful with the public. Set the expectations. Show them examples. And of my experience has been there's been a groundswell shift. And my experience has been there's been a groundswell increased density over the past decade in the acceptance of increased
Hi, Robert
density.
and Abby. This is Tyler here. I was wondering if maybe this is something you're not able to share yet, but I was wondering if are you able to talk maybe this is something you're not able to share yet, but are you able to talk at all about an impact on BART, the ACE station or stop, or and what is how is your life BART or new station or stop or with the development of the how is your life impacted currently with the development of the ACE
calls to move forward with the next phase of development at the Coliseum, move forward with the next phase of development at the Coliseum from the Coliseum Connections, which was 110 units that was opened in 2018. One, we don't have the capacity right now to facilitate. We don't have the capacity right now to another project facilitate at BART. Moving and another project, the environmental phases at BART, and lots of community meetings, the environmental but also there's that great uncertainty about lots of community meetings at the Coliseum. But also there's that great uncertainty about real estate markets are based on some level of expectation. Real estate markets are based on when you look across the level of expectation. I think there's a big question mark there. And when you look across the street from the BART station, I think there's a big question mark there. It has to be resolved.
I guess also the follow-up too is the impact on BART. I guess also the follow-up too the waterfront location. The impact on BART. It's planned to be downtown. I guess I'm at the waterfront location also asking. It's planned dovetailing into what you addressed. I guess I'm also what is happening is dovetailing into what you addressed. Currently any BART conceptual what is happening with that? Is there any? Is there currently any BART and the Capital Corridor? I also serve on the Capital Corridor Governing Board. BART and the Capital Corridor. I also serve on the Capital Corridor lengthy responses to the environmental impact reports. Lengthy responses to the environmental. To put it impact. The short version is we're disappointed. And to put it, the short version is we're disappointed. Will not see the level of ridership, but the demands on BART will not see the level of ridership, but the demands on BART will be, say, if the Howard Terminal still there will be substantial peak ridership, but there would be 3 stations the Howard Terminal. So I can't just have. But there would be 3 stations extra, so I can't just station agents, even a lot of police technicians, our station agents, even our the Coliseum technicians, to make sure that all the fare gates are operating throughout the Coliseum, to make sure that all the fare gates are operating. We would need to multiply that by 3 different stations. Surrounding we would need to multiply that by 3 different stations surrounding ideally the ballpark and no one of those stations from the Capital Corridor's ideally situated. We have a mainline railroad track from the Capital Corridor's perspective. 30 trains a day. We have a mainline railroad closer to 50 when you consider all the deadhead passenger trains. Actually, closer going back to the yard. Consider all the deadhead that travel right in front of an exit going back to the yard. 35,000 people are expected that travel right in front of an exit. We're very concerned about public safety and herd behavior. We're very concerned about public safety and herd behavior. Terrible consequences. Is something that can have some terrible consequences.
Should I move to Phoebe? All right. Should I move to Phoebe? All right. Right. Oh, there we go. Right.
Okay, thank you, Abby. All right.
There we go.
Good evening, everyone. I am Phoebe Chang. I manage a team of civil. Good evening, everyone. I am Phoebe Chang. I manage a team of civil private development engineers at BART, as Abby mentioned. I hope there are a lot of private developments around BART about some of the challenging situations that we share with you tonight. What my team is looking some of the challenging situations that we and give you some tips. What my team is looking for when we do in similar projects, and give you some tips for success. Shall you get involved in similar projects? Okay, the stars on the map show locations of some of the developments that my team has come across. The stars on the map show the locations of some of the developments that my team has come across. And along Market and Mission the developments are along Broadway in Oakland. It typically consists of converting a 2 to 3 story wood or masonry building. It typically consists of converting a 30 or 40 story wood or masonry building. The cities are the ones to issue the 30 or 40 story building. However, the cities will not issue the cities are the ones to issue the building permit to review. However, the cities will not have established until BART has finished reviewing the development concurrently. And BART and the cities have established the developments that we are reviewing with the developers in the city. We support them to develop their vision and work closely with the developers making sure that our structures and operations are not their vision and goals, while making sure that our structures the whole review process can take quite some time and may require multiple iterations. The whole review process, especially when it involves challenging situations, and may require multiple iterations, especially when it involves challenging situations. Next slide. Okay, here are 3 examples of such situations. In Figure 1, you see a tall building over BART situations. And when you have a tall building, you see a tall building with height greater than 160 feet. And when you have a tall depending on the lateral with height greater than 160 typical feet, building codes like depending on the lateral force may not be sufficient to address some typical of the building codes like California building therefore in addition to designing to address some of the failure modes therefore in addition to designing you may need to apply the performance-based design approach California building code and performance-based design approach requires more sophisticated analysis. It is not performance-based design approach everyone requires more so you need to keep that in mind when you plan. It is not typical and not everyone can do it. Also, this building is on top of 3 BART tunnels project, and the tunnels are not designed to this building is on top of building tunnels. So the foundations are not designed across the tunnel carry the load from the building. So the foundation and transfer it to the piles away from the tunnel. Carries the load from the building at the bottom and transfer it to the piles away from the piles of the corners. That is why if you look at the bottom of the figure, you see clusters. And this is a complex system. And for complex systems like these, BART requires third-party review. And this is a complex system. And for complex systems like these, and we have very specific requirements about what peer review entails. And we have very come across projects like this about make sure that you give it ample time to take. So when you come across projects like allow that peer review, make sure that you give it ample time the peer review process to proceed. To allow that peer review to take. And in Figure 2, the building has steep escalation. It has 6 stories below ground. The building has steep escalation. Existing underground station. It has 6 stories below ground. So shoring design and groundwater monitoring is underground station. So shoring the building is so close groundwater monitoring is a big when there's an earthquake. The response of the building is so close to the station. When there's an earthquake. The response of the building BART requires special dynamic analysis to make sure that both structures are okay. BART requires special dynamic analysis to make sure that both structures are okay. Look at Figure 3. This building is close to BART as well. Now looking the escalation is not steep. This building is close to BART as well. Foundations, but the escalation is not steep to minimize and the developers of one structure onto the other with special details to minimize the impact of one structure onto the other, scenarios, and that is a very smart approach. At BART, we will scrutinize the design and construction approaches very carefully. At BART, we will more likely than not, the design and construction peer review is very carefully. And in this case, more likely than not, third-party peer review is required to approve a third-party peer BART and the city to work closely together. And at BART, we will review the design ourselves as well, but we'll also review the findings. And at BART, we will review the design ourselves as well. That requires also review the findings from the peer potential workshops in order to requires planning and frequent meetings and potential workshops in order to attest to how difficult that is. I think we're probably gonna can attest to how difficult that is. Last slide. So here are some tips for an efficient and successful BART review. Last slide. Here are some tips to follow the process. For an efficient shortcut usually take longer to complete. One is to follow
Sometimes
the process. Developers will try to take shortcuts, usually take longer. But it ends up taking longer primarily Sometimes developers will try to take shortcuts. One is that BART engineers have been longer primarily because of two reasons. Have very good understanding of the vulnerabilities of BART systems for a long time. And the challenges of building around BART. Understanding of the vulnerabilities it is a little bit difficult to convince them. And the challenges of building around BART, or you don't need to. So it is a little bit difficult to convince them that their concerns are not valid, or you don't need to. When we deviate from an established process, it means and reason two is that when we deviate from an established process, and that takes time. A lot of meetings for discussions. At BART, we are open to approaches and ideas. It's just that all of us need to be aware that when we go that ideas, there is that risk of all of us need to be aware that when we go that route, and we have a project where we went round and round, and after 6 months, and we have a project where we went round and round, and after 6 months, and we ended up the developers still have to go back to the way it was. It's just during design phase, you need to apply for permit and plan review. So go to our website during design and read all the information there, and also get a very good understanding. So go to our website and read up all the information there. It is important to involve BART facility standards requirements. Addie has mentioned that part of it is important to involve the reasons for that, even since Addie has mentioned that part of from conceptual to development for that submittal stages. From the very beginning, during the conceptual to development phase of the project stages, where no real engineering during has happened yet. BART can provide insights into design where no real engineering has happened yet. BART can provide insights and thus we can help to ensure that your design allows for safe and reliable operations. And thus we can help to ensure that your design allows for safe and reliable operations and after completion of the project. Both during construction, during the development after completion development phase, when you start during the developmental site investigation development phase or geotechnical exploration. You start to initiate site investigation. It is a good time for geotechnical exploration, design criteria and assumption. It is a good time. We notice that some projects run into cost and delay problems. Because we notice sometimes they have to projects run into cost and delay because it was determined later on. Sometimes they have to go project criteria and redesign because it was determined later on that can cause their project criteria doesn't meet BART's requirement. That it is understood that no permit will be issued until 100% design and plans are approved. It is understood that no permit will be issued until send your milestone and plans are approved. Like the 35%, 65%, it is important to send your milestone for BART review, like the 35%, 65%, 95%, and avoid last minute for BART review, so that we can give you feedback early on. And probably most importantly, surprises to get in touch with BART staff. You will work probably most importantly. They initiate the review process, they issue permits, they keep track of real estate, BART's process and protocols, make sure that they properly follow. Issue permits, they keep track of all BART process and protocols, make sure that they are properly followed. They are the one to coordinate with the integration engineer, the developers, they are very technical experts. They are the one to coordinate the stakeholders, staff. They make sure that whoever needs to get involved are in the city staff. And also you they make sure that whoever needs to get involved are in. They are a main reviewer. And also you work closely and they'll be able to provide you with a lot of great insights reviewer helpful tips throughout. And they'll be able to provide you with a lot of great insights. During construction, you need to apply permit to enter and submit sites. During construction, you need to apply permit to enter how you will do the job. Sites and BART will evaluate and make sure that it doesn't that illustrates how you will do the job. And some issues and make sure that it doesn't negatively construction vibrations movements. And some issues concerns such as blocking or construction vibrations or changing the loading safety concerns such as blocking or patron egress. So for all these things that I have shared today, if there's one takeaway for this presentation, all these things that I have shared today, if there's one takeaway for this presentation, it is to engage BART early. I hope the information is useful and wish you all great success as you I hope the information is most challenging projects in the Bay Area. Great success as you take on some of these most challenging projects in the Bay Area.
And Will, why don't you talk about taking on one of these most challenging projects in the Bay Area? Why don't you talk about taking on one of these most challenging projects in the Bay Area?
First of all, I really want to commend
Director Raburn and Abby and the BART team for embracing
Director
density,
Raburn and Abby
and leading the way embracing what I really think is a game changer for some of the most important sites in the entire Bay Area. What I really think is a game changer, and I think for some of the most important density, but also in the entire Bay Area. Really embracing the idea of that it's embracing density, but also thinking really embracing the idea of robust income level benefits, thinking of riders really drives home, and the fact that income affordability is not just about housing of riders really drives home transit affordability. Affordability is not just about thinking about ways to get more affordable housing affordability on transit, and thinking about ways to get more affordable housing. We feel lucky to be a part of that with the Lake Merritt project. We are lucky to be a part of Strata Investment Group with the Lake Merritt project is the developer. We are high-rise Strata Investment Group at the Lake Merritt BART Station, developer partnered with high-rise fantastic nonprofit BART Station, and we are partnered with a fantastic development corporation nonprofit. They're doing affordable housing and Asian Local Development Corporation, a market rate. They're doing middle-income housing residential tower as well as a commercial tower, which a middle-income residential tower as well as a commercial tower which is set aside for below market rate. Also feature community groups and commercial space that is set aside for below market rate. I'll just give some kind of brief comments about the project, and then I'm very happy to answer questions. I'll just give some kind of brief comments about the project, and then Lake Merritt BART Station site is a really interesting, it's a fantastic site. It's a challenge. Lake Merritt BART Station site is a really interesting, fantastic site. It's a challenging site. And Phoebe's team on Strata project in San Francisco that was over the BART track, and Phoebe's team on the tunnel was about 80 feet below grade, and over the BART track over the tunnel. The tunnel was about 80 feet below grade, around it, and we were able to build over some over the tunnel solutions. And I would echo around it and came up with some great solutions early and often. I would echo to coordinate. Statement about working early and often at Lake Merritt to coordinate. The station entrance and the tracks are really right at the surface. At Lake Merritt, so while the station entrance and the tracks are really right at the surface, we were able to build our foundation above the tunnel. San Francisco, we were able to build. We evaluated the foundation and just above this really determined that wasn't possible because we evaluated the bridging over the tracks. Really determined that wasn't building over the tracks. Bridging over the tracks is expensive. Building over the tracks thought it was not feasible because by the time you get a foundation and we really were going to have it was not have interference with construction with the tunnel itself. You were going to have interference when BART, this is with the tunnel probably backed up that this was an RFP process when BART, this is BART a couple of years ago, this was an RFP we and Abalsi proposed with BART a couple of years ago project here, and we and Abalsi on the slide in front of you that here, and the sort of the site on to the left, the slide is where the blue shading is is the Lake Merritt to the left, which is where the tunnel is that blue line that kind of goes is the Lake Merritt BART Station, and the tunnel early on blue line that kind of goes really the best solution here is to break the site into two. Early on decided was and have really the best solution here is to break the site into two, ground floor retail and have the tunnel sort of two residential buildings this with ground floor retail principle and opportunity. The tunnel sort of while we were going to have to organize building principle and opportunity, we could really find a way to celebrate. While we were going to have to use it as an access, we could really find a way to celebrate. It's a pretty unique opportunity to use it as there are not a lot of sites where you have access. It's a pretty unique opportunity in Oakland. There are not a lot of sites are set up where you're only walking outside the block. And so the building on the left, the high rise, where you're only walking outside residential tower. And so the building on the left, the high rise is Strata, and the building on the right, residential tower. Abalsi is the architect, about 100 unit Strata, affordable. And the building on the right is Abalsi, there, about 100 unit senior affordable housing building. Organization of the site there, and really this focus on organization of the urban planning and urban design element encouraged us to focus on this site and urban planning and urban design element station of this and brought on site and the block fantastic landscape and the BART station urban planning firm and brought on just a fantastic landscape in Oakland and thought about what is that area become based in Oakland and thought about so what does that area become that throughway between the two buildings. And Abby, I think if you go to the next slide, you see the way we started to organize our thinking around this site, and again, you see the way we started to organize our thinking around the paseo. Again, that passageway, the BART entrances, kind of referred to as the paseo site, connect, and on the kind of right the BART entrances is Fallon Street and Laney College. Right on the kind of right side of this opportunity to Fallon Street and Laney College, right across the street, and so it was this opportunity to it is not without its challenges. We are early on in the concept phase. It is not as Abby mentioned. It is not without its challenges. We are early on in the concept phase. As Abby mentioned, we're going to planning commission, the PDP, the preliminary development plan. So it's really just on a concept stage. It's called the PDP, the preliminary development plan. To this point, so it's really just the concept really working hand in hand. In order to BART engineering and to the maintenance and security, really real estate hand in hand to make sure that this concept engineering and maintenance security and real estate from the structural approach. To make sure that this concept dealing with our foundation, that we're right from next to the tunnel and how we're dealing with our foundation, how we're dealing with access to next to the tunnel and station below the tunnel, things that how we're dealing with access for station agents and the station and all the things security and maintenance obligations and all that is complicated and security and maintenance obligations and all that is complicated. The other challenge here is that by creating the other internal open from a design standpoint, the other challenge is a wonderful opportunity, but it also means that our buildings do not have back doors. It is a wonderful opportunity, but it also means that our buildings do not have back doors. Every side, that's really a wonderful outcome, is activated on a lot of levels. It also means, where do you put all the back? That's really a wonderful outcome. Buildings have to have. It also means, where do you put all the back and electrical rooms? Buildings have to have service the building, and so we've been working a lot with BART and with the service of the building, and so planning staff. We've been working a lot with BART and with much of the facades as we can, but recognize to try to find ways to activate as much of the facades as we can, but recognize to screen. There are going to be design solutions for some parts of the building, and some of those screen or find design solutions for have to be on the street. And some of those where typically you would push those off of the street have to be on. So that's been an ongoing process. You would push those off of the street front. So that's been an ongoing process of how. Working early with BART and understanding the great example, I think, of how working early with BART and understanding the other requirements that BART has early on allowed all of the structural and other requirements that BART has early on allowed us idea for how we approach the design and really make this a collaborative idea for how we approach with an exciting plan and something that really makes this a collaborative effort. It allows us to come up with a deliver, as I mentioned, a lot of density, very unique in Oakland. We're over 40% affordable to deliver, as I mentioned, a lot of density. So we're very excited to get to the next stage on affordable housing. And so we're very excited to get to the next stage on this project.
Thanks, Will. Thanks, Will. So I think that's it on our presentation. So Brian, you want to take it away?
We do have one question, and going back to parking. Does BART work with developers to share parking within the transit-oriented development projects, or require developers to provide parking, BART parking? So how does that work? And I'm sure that depends on the deal, but
yes, that is our number one question. So we are it absolutely depends on the deal, and I think that the 2016 policies that Director Raburn laid out at the beginning have really changed the way that BART is addressing parking. So before that, I would say back in 2004, 2005, the BART Board adopted its first TOD policy. And at that point, there was a moment of liberation where BART had traditionally before then really been wedded to this idea of one-for-one replacement parking, that every parking space lost at a station had to be replaced in a structure or replaced somewhere else. And, as early as 2004, 2005, thanks to some work by Robert Raburn, and we were able to kind of relieve ourselves of that and say, you know what, that's not really what we need and what's appropriate. But it wasn't really until the 2016 policy that we created the station area station access investment framework and investment typology, where we actually, classified our stations into these 5 access types based on the, the way that people were getting to the stations already and the surrounding urban fabric. And at that point, we were ready to say, there are stations that are more urban where we have parking, but where there are really high percentages of people who walk, bike, and take transit. And at those stations, the board was bold enough to adopt this policy language that I think is even still kind of a little bit unbelievable, that, these urban with parking stations, which are effectively all the stations from, as far north as El Cerrito, as far south as San Leandro, and then into San Francisco, where we will strive for little to no replacement parking. At West Oakland and at Lake Merritt, the city and the communities also really chimed in on this by declaring in the plans that there was no desire locally for replacement parking. And so for those projects, we were able to go in and really, when the RFQ for Lake Merritt, we just said there's not going to be any. There were only 100 some odd spaces there anyway, but it really freed us up. But I think now, and at other stations we have done shared on-street parking. Hayward and Coliseum in the city of Oakland was really a great partner in the Coliseum Connections project, and converted on-street parking spaces into BART parking spaces so we would not have to replace on-site. And as well as at Hayward. And now we are looking at models where we can share parking in a single garage. That has some serious design implications that I think many of you on the phone could tell me more about than I could tell you, but there are safety and security issues of having any BART patron just be able to waltz into a garage. And we have a shared parking garage at San Leandro at Maria Alta underground, where it's a single entrance for tenants and for BART patrons. It's been, the lenders there were really uncomfortable with the idea of the public having access to this garage, and the core of the building has a fenced off area for tenants to park. So they go through the main gate in, and then they can go through a gate at the core of the parking garage, and then they have their own elevator into the building. So it's safe and secure. But BART really benefits from daily parking, and the developer really and lender really wanted monthly parking there because they wanted to know who was going in and out. They wanted to have information on the people going in and out, and key fobs and locks. And as a result, the parking has been really underutilized. And now we're looking at this model similar, for El Cerrito Plaza, we are contemplating a shared parking garage. We are also really open to contemplating shared parking spaces where BART patrons use them during the day and residents get them at night. State regulations make that difficult, if not impossible, to do for affordable housing, because the cost of the parking has to be part of the tax credit basis. And so they have to own the spaces, and they're not allowed to price the spaces, so they can't unbundle. So there are some challenges there still that we're facing, but we're really open to it. We're really trying to pursue it. We've been trying to pursue shared parking with other, like where there's a shopping center or something near us. We've been talking to those private uses that have parking that's maybe only needs to be used in evenings and weekends when we don't need it. So we're trying to move to more innovative models and really think about parking as a shared resource.
I'll ask one more question, and then hopefully that stimulates other ones from other people. Director Raburn started off that image, the 1962 image of Rockridge BART station, potentially with the urbanization around it. And Abby, you kind of tiptoed around Rockridge and its effect on AB 2923. So I'm just wondering, where's it going? What's the plans for Rockridge?
Rockridge is in our 5-year work plan. We own, the majority of land is of course under the freeway and is not owned by BART, but we own a portion of land to the north across from the side entrance to the Trader Joe's parking lot, for those who are familiar with the area. And we own the corner of Forest and Shafter, a piece of land there that is roughly Market Hall sized and shaped. So yes, absolutely, Rockridge is on the table. The land there is zoned for single family dwellings or not zoned at all. And we are right now trying to contemplate with been speaking with our own electeds as well as city electeds about how to engage in the conversation. I would love to hear folks' ideas on this in this meeting about how we can engage in that conversation. Come July 1, 2022, those sites will be rezoned to allow for 7-story buildings, 0 minimum parking, and a maximum parking ratio of a half a space per unit. The zoning will not be an issue. The zoning will become that. The question is just what, I think for BART, I think we see that as a priority affordable housing site. We'd like to maximize affordable housing there. We really see, and I think generally we're moving towards just a model where any high opportunity location, you're going to see us put really high expectations for affordable housing on those sites. Any ideas about how we should engage in Rockridge? I am totally open to having that conversation right now or in the future. Anybody?
I don't see any new.
Well, you can reach out to me quietly if you don't want to say in front of a bunch of people, but we've gone public with it, that it was taboo to discuss development in Berkeley and at Rockridge, and it's not anymore. It's on the table.
Other questions, please just unmute and you can ask them. That works. We can type in the chat and I can relay them to the panelists.
I've got a question. So,
nice. Yeah.
Brian, can I go?
Please, good to see you, sorry.
Okay, so Brian Hasmer, architect in San Leandro. We, as of today's San Leandro Times, were notified that we finally have a new city manager, and wondering if BART has been in contact with the city to talk about kind of what this newly elected or newly appointed city manager is going to do, what we might be doing in San Leandro with the area around the OSI Soft campus, which is Ghirardelli, OSI Soft, and otherwise mostly vacant. And if there's any ideas of what we're going to do with our vacant parking lot on the corner of Davis and San Leandro Boulevard, since nobody's taking BART right now.
Director Raburn, you want me to start, or do you want to start?
No, go right ahead. I have more long-term visions for San Leandro, but and they're based on I think 2 iterations of city managers ago asked me what I thought about Bayfair. And I said, bring the wrecking ball and let's create a main street with all the housing and the benefits that really would create a new activity center. And that was pretty much the direction that many people have gone in. I don't know if the new city manager will embrace that. We had a number of electeds in the area that liked the concept of redeveloping the Bayfair Mall into a new activity center in San Leandro. Right around Maria Alta and OSI Soft, there's additional land. We're going to have a meeting with the city to talk about our capital corridor plan soon, and maybe I can squeeze in a few thoughts on just the increased BART service, because let's face it, since we've opened new lines down in Santa Clara County, 2 new stations, we have an additional line coming up from Santa Clara County that is adding service to the stations in San Leandro. So this is an exciting prospect to actually contemplate growing the transit-oriented development in San Leandro beyond what I think is a tremendous start that is already in place.
San Leandro has been a fantastic city partner, generally speaking, and I had not heard that there was a new city manager, and I've not interacted, but historically we have a really, really good relationship. They've done a really great job of creating a plan for San Leandro that they've stuck to for 15, 16 years. And our sites around the San Leandro BART station are fairly narrow. And so our understanding is it's going to be pretty challenging to build housing on those sites. There's sort of the corner of San Leandro and Davis that might be wide enough to accommodate something there. On the OSI soft side, we and the city of San Leandro have long been trying to support the East Bay Greenway, and particularly ACTC's acquisition of the UP Oakland spur there, which I know is a favorite topic of Director Raburn's as well. This is a track that impedes pedestrian and bike access from our stations, from 5 of our stations, I believe.
Yes.
Beginning at Coliseum, right?
Well, it formerly impeded Fruitvale even, but now we put a parking garage where the railroad right-of-way was.
Yeah, so our properties are too narrow to really develop on, and we and frankly Westlake Urban, who owns the OSI Soft campus, have long wanted to assemble our property to do something bigger than ourselves. And it's just a matter of political leadership, I think, at the state level to unlock the East Bay Greenway and enable us to assemble our land. And we and San Leandro both have been really advocating hard for that. Yeah, Bayfair also. Bayfair is moving forward. The Bayfair specific plan, I think, got tied up because it had attempted to rezone a mobile home park. And my understanding is the council is now really looking really hard at the displacement effects of that and trying to preserve some of the mobile home parks in the area. But our property is, they really push the densities and heights in the Bayfair plan. So we're ready to go as soon as the mall is ready to go. It's an exciting it's one of our biggest sort of core opportunities.
Right.
So if no one else has questions, I have two. This is Frank Fuller. I'm an architect, urban designer person. And I wanted to ask, first of all, to Phoebe and to Will, what did you do with the fact that that tunnel is right up next to both, well, mainly your high rise, and how did you solve that problem? That's the first question. The second question is I'd love to hear anyone's talk about Link 21 and where it's going and how it affects Oakland.
Hey Frank, I could answer the first part of that question, which I should preface this by saying we haven't fully solved it yet because we're just getting into, we're really at a conceptual design phase. The next stage will be to get into what Phoebe described, as we advance schematic design and design development and permitting to really dig in deeper with the engineering team, but at a high level and kind of based on the level of design we are at, our approach has been we have to keep 10 feet. There's a 10-foot buffer from the tunnel itself. So we've set our building back 10 feet from that tunnel. Our foundation will need to be at least partially supported on piles, and the piles go down below the tunnel. So we actually go below the zone of influence. And the load of the building will be supported below the zone of influence. We do have a portion of our tower, which I know it's really small, but you can see on the diagram on the left where the building is cantilevered a little bit over the kind of pile that's closest to the tunnel, and I think but we are staying out of the airspace directly above the tunnel because once a portion of the building comes into that airspace, there's a whole different level of structural requirement, and so we've had to keep the building pulled away and really stay out of that area. just because it's not that it's impossible to build there. It's just it adds another level of cost and complexity that we wanted to try to avoid.
And
I think that Will explained it really well. That his approach is what we have seen when construction is near BART facilities. And for this one, when it's close by, and it's very important to be outside of zone influence, and using piles is a great way to do it. And I think that based on past approach, that's how we have been doing it. And when you use piles, BART has this detailing that it's like kind of a sleeve where outside of that low bearing pile, this way you create some kind of gap between the soil and also the load, and you, in a way, you isolate that structure from BART structure. And so that's one way of doing it. Let's say, you know, when you get into a situation where it's impossible, you have to be inside BART's area, and the way to move forward is to actually, I guess, bite the bullet to do the analysis to determine what the impacts are and what potential solutions may be. There are other solutions that people use, including putting some kind of an isolation and try to reduce the impact, try to isolate the two structures. So there are different approaches. I haven't seen one that people will try to impose load onto BART structures and to do a BART structural retrofit. That is just way too messy. So every attempt is made to try to isolate the two systems.
Just to add another example to that, I mentioned we have Strata has a project which is now under construction on Market Street, and basically Market and 12th in San Francisco, and it's right where the BART tunnel turns off of Market and goes into the Mission, and the BART tunnel cuts right through our site. And there, the tunnel is about, as I think I mentioned this earlier, is almost 80 feet below the surface, and we have 85-foot buildings, so we don't have that super high-rise building. What we were actually able to do, working with Phoebe's team, is come up with a creative solution where we determined how much dirt we would have to excavate out to balance the weight of the new building. So the goal is to have no net new load on the tunnel. And we figured out with our great structural engineers and geotechnical engineers that, you know, at about, it sort of varies where you are on the site, but at about 23 feet, if you excavate 23 feet of soil, you basically balanced out the weight of an 85-foot concrete building. And so there's then no net new load on the tunnel. And so that was I thought just that blew me away, that solution when we first kind of came up with it. Brian was mentioning that earlier. He and his team at Kennerly worked on that project, but just a very different solution than when the tunnel's right at the surface and you really don't have that area to balance out. You're looking at a different approach, but to illustrate Phoebe's point about the variety of solutions that are out there.
And regarding, am I on? Yes. Regarding Link 21, that's the bold idea to connect 21 counties in Northern California together with rail. Both BART and the Capital Corridor are engaged in this. It would also include a new Transbay crossing. The exciting component of this project for me is that we're focused on equity. And I've been pushing that equity include how we pay for it. And in that regard, we get back to the topic at hand here tonight. And that's, I call it value capture, that the land that is being raised in value from the provision of tremendous new access improvements should help with the delivery of the overall project, rather than, oh, we'll build our part first and then go out and market it to everyone else. So We expect within a year to actually have some lines on a map to whittle down to a single proposal for the alignment of where the tunnels would go. The one thing we do know is that the new crossing will not directly follow the Market Street alignment in San Francisco. It has to be offset, most likely to the south, of course. Where it lands in the East Bay and how it ties in with both the passenger rail and BART lines, it remains to be seen when everything's unveiled, probably in 2022. Anything else to add on that?
I would just add
opportunities that would come.
Well, I think until we have the alignment, it's a little hard to say. But on the TOD side, what I was going to add is, MTC back, I think 2004, 2005 adopted its own TOD policy, which, while in TOD in name, was really a system expansion policy that basically mandated certain planning procedures and levels of density of new development to be planned around new transit corridors. They are now, a lot of those corridors have been built, by the way. So eBART was one, BART to San Jose, SMART, trying to think, some of the ferries were in there as well. They're updating their policy as most of those have been constructed. And the question is it going to be more of a TOD policy, or is it going to continue to be sort of a system expansion, sort of setting expectations for land use around new transportation investments? I think we're all anticipating it'll probably be a little bit of both. But on that topic, I think it's really just the equity element and the concerns as we're investing in as we're talking about investing in a both mega regional but also core transportation infrastructure investment is how can we mitigate the potential damage of displacement? How can we stop displacement from occurring when we are vastly increasing the value of some of these communities that probably it is going to go through some lower income and vulnerable communities? And I think that's just going to be key to this whole conversation about TOD is what is the equity parameter around that, and how can we capture value, not just to deliver the transit construction, but how can we capture value that gets reinvested back in the community? We as California don't have the right tools. I think we all need to be really engaged in that conversation. It's really dismaying that we're in this incredibly sophisticated state, and when it comes to value capture, we're really behind the times. So I'd be curious to hear others' thoughts about what they'd like to see, and please do engage with MTC on this policy too. I obviously have my own ideas about what should be in it, but.
And another model to look at is what's going on down at the Diridon station in San Jose, where, it's amazing. I once taught urban geography at San Jose State in planning classes. And it was the test tube for what not to do, with the metastasizing suburbs out in the Evergreen area. And now the mayor, Sam Liccardo, is looking at the models that BART's been building, and he wants to embrace density. And Google is there, and they're not proposing to build a spaceship type development. They're trying to bring in developments that will really be integrated with the station area as it exists, but with considerable density increases, as would befit a station served by both high-speed rail, the Caltrain Capital Corridor, and BART.
We probably have time for one more question. That was a great one to end on, but I'm going to give the opportunity for someone else if they feel.
Hi, I have one more question. My name is Faye, and actually, full disclosure, I'm with VTA TOD, although I'm attending this as part of the public. So my question is, would BART ever want to be the developer themselves and just cut out the developer? Sorry, Will.
We like Will too much to.
I'm interested in this answer. Yeah.
You know, we've gotten a lot of really interesting inquiries as AB 2923 was going forward about how we can take this to a bigger scale, and not necessarily BART. I mean, we don't have the staff today, I think, to really take that on. But there have been some interesting ideas floated about putting out multiple sites at once. Really doing things on a bigger scale and getting a master developer for maybe 5 sites. And maybe some of them are like the cream of the crop sites that everybody would want. And some of them are the sites that are going to be a lot harder to build in the market. And you get to, you know, the point is you have to build them all. And like maybe there's something like that we could do to really go bigger and go faster. I think Faye, VTA is, VTA somehow puts out a lot more RFPs than we do. And honestly, I don't like, they do 5 a year and we can barely do 1 or 2 a year. And I honestly don't know how they do it. And I wonder about, you know, the load that we're putting on Phoebe and on the M&E department is pretty extensive at this point, and on our own lawyers. And I think we really are trying to find ways to scale up and go bigger and do more. And we just haven't cracked the nut yet because these are hard. These are really hard projects. So I'm totally open to exploring the ideas because I think that my charge in overseeing this and from the board is to find ways to take it to scale. So
I could see somewhat of a phased approach toward this with mainly land assembly. That's what we need, to take some parcels that BART owns and be able to cobble them together with privately held parcels nearby and entice then still a third-party developer to come in and work on building a unified vision on those properties. So that's something that's in need today. You know, there's some minefields around that anytime you start talking about public agencies taking land, or it's fraught with disasters. But there is some legislation that actually permits BART to buy land, so for transit-oriented development even.
Yeah, Director Raburn, it's interesting that you raised that. And Faye, I'm glad you're here, and thank you for asking that question, because I think VTA is doing some really interesting stuff on this front around. And I don't know if anybody in the meeting has done this. Let me know, around like design development, you know, agreements, or where you are actually planning out and trying to entitle multiple sites with the hope that, you know, the promise of the vast economic benefit of assembling properties will entice property owners to voluntarily assemble land. I know that it used to be the LA Redevelopment Agency would do these plans too. Instead of eminent domaining, they would increase the value of the land, you know, in an assembly situation. I don't know if anyone here has been involved in any of those. It's a model that I'm really intrigued by. Or Will, I don't know if you've been, but I'd love to, you know, explore more proactive approaches like that.
Good. Wow.
I can do one more question probably, otherwise anyone has it?
Douglas Fraser here. I'm also an architect. Just one suggestion for a possible follow-up to this presentation. What about TOD along the Capitol Corridor, where it's not concurrent with BART locations? Perhaps you can convince Robert to come back and talk a little bit about that.
Well, when we talk about, when Abby talks about the small size of BART's real estate planning department and our associated departments in engineering that Phoebe's running, we're really huge compared to the staff that the Capitol Corridor have. So I would have to say that the Capitol Corridor development of property around our stations is even farther afield. But it's something that as we embark right now on developing our vision implementation plan for the Capitol Corridor, that vision includes BART-like frequencies using renewable fuels somewhere in the future. Of course, we would expect transit-oriented development to be part and parcel of that, so to speak, development.
That's a good way to end. I like that one. That's perfect conclusion. I did tip my BART hat to you guys. Thank you so much for joining us, Robert, Abby.
Thank you.
And Will, everyone else who's asked questions, Phoebe. Thank you so much for your time and your knowledge and all the things you're doing for the region. I really appreciate it.
It was fun.
Thanks for having us.
Good group. Yeah. All right.
But
well,
good evening.
Everyone, stay safe. Hop on a BART train. I think we had a new record yesterday of 63,000 passengers. So wow. We're beginning to creep back up.
That's a great sign. Yeah. Thank you all. Right. Good night.
Good night.